some point of time, we know we will come out of this, right? And while COVID is a catalyst to digitization, by the way, the same can be said for Waha, there's more to it for what this new normal will look like. So, Michael, let's continue with that thought. And what do you think, as we come out of this, because we will, what do you think does the new normal look like? What's your vision of the new normal?
That's a great question, Amit. So I think we're living in it right now. I think that companies that have made the conversion to work at home, even reluctantly, are finding out it actually works, and that they're going to be bugs, they're going to be challenges, but they've worked them out because we're looking for two things: for folks to be safe and for them to be productive. So clearly, Zoom is probably the video conferencing deployment, of choice, frankly. But there are a lot of other tools that folks can use. I think that with the uncertainty, unpredictability that comes with this, we're living with this day by day. And I think that companies are spending most of their time with their heads down on business continuity planning, but thinking about the next 6 months. What's this going to mean to the organization in terms of how things are laid out, what the org chart looks like, who's working from home, who's not, and how it can benefit the business in the long run.
Melissa, actually, Michael, I want to come back to you on the BCP piece. Sure. Because obviously, we've had to mobilize. Everybody has had to mobilize from a BCP perspective. How do you look at BCP in the new normal?
So here's what I've seen. This notion of proactive outreach, as I mentioned before, to employees and clients, and telling them exactly what you're going to do. There's a preventive measure like taking temperatures in contact centers where employees are still working. That's important. Status surveys, having provisions on site. For example, ample drinking water, face masks, disinfectants. I learned recently Teleperformance has a stock of 6 million masks for its contact center employees that are in sites. That's significant. Antibacterial sprays everywhere, frankly. The other piece that includes elevating cleaning and sanitizing procedures at delivery sites. And that's just not domestic. That's nearshore and offshore, pretty much everywhere. And then last, this whole transition, which has been huge, moving entire lines of business, even entire accounts, to a work-at-home agent model. And that includes a lot. It's not just moving the agent and the equipment. There's the recruiting, the hiring, the training, the onboarding, all the normal things that would happen in a contact center environment. And then finally, I think it's going to be about real-time monitoring of global situations, be it a pandemic, a political situation, and the like. And, having the executive teams make this kind of monitoring and readout a real priority to review and take immediate action if necessary to restore critical business functions to some level of normalcy.
Great, thanks for that insight there, Michael.
You bet.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that insight. Melissa, HFS has had an interesting take on One Office and digital transformation in particular. So share with the audience, if you will, your vision of the new normal, particularly as it relates to the One Office and digital transformation platforms.
Sure. Yeah. So I think everyone's trying to figure out what the new normal looks like, and nobody quite knows, right? But we've had this sort of framework that we've been working with at HFS and that we've been promoting and evangelizing called the One Office that you mentioned. So if I could indulge in that kind of slightly idealized version, we can talk about some of the practical elements, but the One Office concept, with time frame in mind, in short, it's really about aligning an entire organization to customer experience. And we have evolved that model to now include employee experience and really any stakeholder experience. So how are folks getting information, connecting processes, using intelligent digital technology to support it? But that's sort of what we've been talking about moving toward. And I truly believe that smart companies that have made the right investments or are making the right decisions now can come out of this stronger from an experience standpoint. And what that means for CX is really kind of a redesign and an assessment of the processes that support customer experience and the people that are on the front lines of customer experience. So finding that right balance. Of course, right now, first and foremost, it's about taking care of employees. What does that look like down the line as centers start to open here and there, or perhaps they open and then you have to take folks back due to different waves. I think the point here is around looking at this digital transformation that everyone's been talking about. Now we actually have the opportunity to take a step back and see, what does the channel mix look like? What is, how can we use intelligent bots and AI? And all of these are different levers that you can pull on, including work from home and including just geographical diversity, right? So it's all a piece of it. And finding that right balance that truly supports the customer experience, the employee experience. So that's my optimistic vision, and I actually think it's quite attainable if companies take a good hard look right now at what's going well and what's going wrong.
Optimism is definitely the need of the hour, Melissa. Steve, when we talked, you were of the opinion that the new normal will bring about some systemic changes. How so?
Yes, Amit. To riff off of what Melissa just said, I agree that there is this quickening, if you will, toward a digital shore, a shoreline with digitization and the use of voice bots and chat bots with AI that are at the same time changing our expectations as consumers for ease and a high level of experience. So I agree with all that, and I've written about it. But I'd also like to be a little bit counterintuitive, and I do think there's an irony at the heart of what we're talking about here. And I mentioned this at your teleperformance facility, in one of them in India in January. And that irony is this. As tech really has ambushed us and increases in speed, this immersive techno-consumerism, if you will, to echo what the earlier sentiments that I expressed, I do think that there may be some pushback, some throttling back on that, if you will, because of this idea of the social contract and a pro-worker agenda. So imagine, if you will, a new normal, and none of us know exactly what the future will be. But I was brainstorming about this, thinking about it. What if in a place like the United States, of all places, there's a bit of an anti-globalization agenda that begins to gain momentum, that begins to take shape? How might that affect our industry, the BPO industry, a more pro-worker agenda, if you will? Progressive policy proposals, sort of a neo-Hamiltonian political economy, if you will, because of the pressure that people exert on the government. And I mentioned a protest that we had here last night in front of Jeff Bezos' house. And so what, for example, think about if there was a decision ultimately to tax labor arbitrage on U.S. firms. I'm not saying that's going to take place, but these are the things we have to start thinking about. We've talked about the possibility that robots could be taxed in prior discussions. So for me, when I think of possible scenarios of the future and a new normal, that cartoon that you put up a slide or two ago, I'd actually think about changing it, where they're sitting around the table and they're saying to each other, there is an assumption that is true, that digitization is taking place. We all know it for sure. And here comes COVID-19 to remind us, sitting around the table, that people are at the heart not only of this industry, but they're out there in the society right now wrestling with this thing. And so we need to remember that. And I'm really interested to see how this evolves, the situation, and how it's going to impact economies and the BPO industry specifically when it comes to not only digitization, but the people at the heart of what we do.